Oh,
Hello, Brian. It's Rowan from Silver Tiger Media. How are you?
well, good morning. How's things in Melbourne?
Excellent. Thank you. Tremendous to speak with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, pleasure's mine. I'm thrilled to be doing it after all these years.
Indeed. And after all these years, Brian, if you don't mind me asking, what springs to mind for you when I say the Mustangs?
Oh, youth.
Indeed.
And how we started was playing the Shadows.
Yes.
Learning exponentially as we went along, because the Shadows demanded that you were that you had your tones right and your timing right, and as we went along, we could play songs with a bit more difficulty. Started with things like FBI, perhaps, and so that just brings back all those young days, just sort of at the end of school at Sacred Heart College, and then moving into getting other members of the band. It's great to be able to remember. It's great to be here to be able to remember it, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Beautifully put. And of course, back in those days, you rehearsed in the shed behind your family-owned pub. Is that right?
Yeah, you're well read. Yes, we did. It used to be horse stables, and then there was a car park with motor trimmers, and we rehearsed in there 5 days a week, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah, because we didn't play much, and it was all consuming, you know. Our music was our life.
Of course. And what brought the late but great Jim Keys along on vocals?
Right. Well, what had happened, the British invasion had started with the Beatles, and then the Rolling Stones and the various other bands, albeit they were a couple of years older than us, so they've got and we could see that there was definitely something afoot, something was happening, and we felt that it was time to perhaps embrace it, because it was really, really exciting music. I mean, there was tones and styles of music coming out that we weren't really okay with, and then we needed a singer, because our current singer of the time could only sing, he's very good, Roy Orbison, Elvis Presley style stuff.
Right.
And so we put an advert in the paper. Well, actually, it was in a music shop. And we got 4 applicants, one of which was a girl who was very good and nearly got the gig. But in those days, of course, girl lead singers were not known, really. They had solo artists. And anyway, Jim came in. Jim had never been in a band before, but he knew what he wanted, by God. And he had the charisma, the looks. He had the same feeling towards the music as we did. He played the harmonica. And so we just gelled. It was like alchemy, really.
Oh, it's almost meant to be. And as you developed
Yes.
more of a Mersey sound, did that reflect what people were interested in hearing? It almost sounds like you as band members were influenced at the time by that sound.
Oh, we were, Rolling Stones, no doubt, Yardbirds, Who, all that sound. And then also we were exploring, because we realised that the Beatles, early Beatles, and the Rolling Stones, most of the Rolling Stones stuff were covers. So that upped up our interest, and so we explored and went down that road of exploring the old blues men of the early 20th century, and coming up with realising that the songs that they did were being covered, along with being covered along with Chuck Berry, as Chuck Berry covered them, and then the Stones covered them, again, second generation. And so obviously, like most bands at the time, we played covers. We hadn't explored our own creativity at that stage, and that was a wonderful base for what happened further down the track.
Absolutely. And, of course, establishing that base, you were pioneers of the mod look, which wasn't really well known in Australia at the time. Would it be fair to say that perhaps with both look and music, albeit inadvertently, you provided a very comfortable landing and more familiar surroundings for young English immigrants?
We did. That was a major a major movement for our success. I'll just move out here. My grandchildren went in there. Was a major influence. You see, the English immigrants who came over and lived in Hostel, Pennington, which is just northwest of the city, and we used to go down there once a month, maybe once every 3 weeks, and we would play, entertain them for free, and as the Mustangs, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. And that's where we started to get a following. And what would happen, that some of those young English immigrants would have arrived just 3 or 4 weeks ago on boat, and prior to that, they would have in the last couple of months seen the Beatles or the Who or the Yardbirds or the Rolling Stones with their dresses, with their LPs, because as you know, it was all snail mail. Mm. And so they influenced it, told us that we looked pretty baggy, you know, how to wear our hair like the Who cut, which is pushed back on the crown, short up the front, and our dress, and that had enormous influence. In fact, that gave us a leg up, if you can see. We sort of knew what was happening.
Yes,
indeed. Pretty important in those days, as they are now.
Most certainly, but they did become a great membership of your fan base at the time, right up until 1965, when you became the Masters Apprentices. Why was the apostrophe left out of Masters?
There's a number of Masters. I always say that, on the contention, the apostrophe should be placed after the Masters. Yes. I don't know how my grammar is, but that's how I felt at the time. There's a number of Masters, you know, from Red Belly, Howling Wolf, Robert Johnston, and then Chuck Berry, of course.
Yes.
So that's how that all come about.
Indeed. There must be such a myriad of fond memories and funny memories for you from that time.
Well, there is. You know, most of it is pretty straight. I mean, we were pretty straight guys. I mean, Jim was an aficionado of his fans, of course.
Yeah.
But,
of course.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to see. You know, for instance, our first single, which is a story in itself, we had to record next week, and we had Water Hands of Time.
Yes.
Which was going to be, that was done and dusted, that was going to be our single. And then 2 days prior to the recording, they rang up and they said, you've got to have a B-side, which we had some into the old thing. And then Rick Morrison came up with the riff for Undecided the night before. And so Michael threw some chords on it, I put a beat on it, and we said to Jim, you know, you've got to get some words. So he's come to practice with no words. Oh, I'll have them for tomorrow night, right. And so we go to tomorrow, the studio, the next night. We've only just learnt the song. Jim had no words, as usual, you know. Jim's always an early boy. So he had lived it all. We did about 16 takes to get it correct. And we didn't have a name for it.
Which was decidedly undecided.
That brought home the bacon. The rest is history on that one.
Indeed. But, I mean, some things are just meant to be, right down to, as I understand, mixed malfunctioning amp that provided that fuzzy sound.
Yeah. Rick had an old golden tone amp. And I think the valve was a valve amp in those days, and the valve was going, and along with the speaker, and that gave that unique sound to the song.
Oh, most certainly, but very memorable indeed. And of course, your first TV appearance was on Channel 7, a Good Friday telethon, and you're introduced by none other than Ernie Sigley. Was that appearance significant for you as a band, allowing you to stretch beyond your existing fan base?
Yeah, well, it was so exciting. I mean, I was only a baby, and the others were much older, and that to go on TV for a start, oh my God, you know, that was the epitome of success to us, you know, having had a record, and so exciting on the telethon. And my father was most concerned because I think we went on in the middle of the night the first time, you know, because he they were brought up with after the war, with Bill Haley and then the oldest to pelvis, and that, as you know, that was all pretty anti-establishment, wasn't it?
That's cool.
So that was good. That was very exciting, and yes, we felt that something's happening. I mean, as I said before, and you said it was meant to be with alchemy, and because of Michael's measured discipline, which he was, as we call him a general, I think that kept us in the straight and narrow on the music scene.
Absolutely.
That we didn't go sideways, and if any of the boys went sideways, it wasn't too far. Because, there was no booze at practice. There was no girls allowed at practice. It was practice. And if we had to do our homework prior to practice, we did it.
Wow, was that disciplined?
It was. It was really disciplined. Yeah. Otherwise,
incredible.
It just wouldn't work.
Well, it did work as your success and popularity grew, and it was in fact the late Stan Rofe, a prominent Melbourne DJ, that at the time was quoted as saying, "The Masters' Apprentices are to Australia what the Rolling Stones are to England and the Doors are to America." Did you hear that quote at the time?
We did. The quote is pretty stating to be used in the same sentence as those groups, so I think we might have let that ball go through to the keeper, because we were pretty humble kids, and if I might say, and that certainly didn't. It excited us by being compared, but we kept our feet on the ground with that one, because we thought there's no way, that we could possibly compare to that in Australia. But looking at it, I guess we were.
Without a doubt, yeah. And do you think that was due to, even in part, to War or Hands of Time, which was the first Australian song to address the Vietnam War? Do you think that had a lot to do with that comment? No, I can certainly not thought along that. No, that was the first anti-Vietnam song. It was very unique. My drumming in it represented machine guns, that's how I thought, and the cymbals represented the dropping of bombs. Yes. If anybody ever picked it up. And we didn't cop any flack. There was no specific protest about it, or, that we should not be doing it. No, incredible. And on the release of Buried and Dead in 1967, the time was right to relocate to Melbourne, which makes your upcoming show just next Friday at the Corner Hotel in Richmond such a monumentally important event. 50 years later, and we'll witness you and Mick Bauer on the stage for the first time in Melbourne in half a century. Wow, isn't it enough? Yeah, to come around twice. We went last time, to come back and be able to do it, right? To be fit enough to do it. A lot of our friends aren't here, like Jim and Steve Hopgood, who took my place, and to be able to do it is just. I'm trying to put a handle on it, to be perfectly honest with you. It's exciting. I'm trying to put a handle. I'm trying to control the excitement, and. Michael's just recovered from a quadruple bypass. I see. He had that Christmas, 2 days before Christmas. I am lucky enough to be held together with a blue tack and a few nuts and bolts. I've lost use of my left hand a fair bit, and so I've got to tape the stick to my left hand to keep it going. But it all works, and I train, go to the gym 3 times a week. Michael trains, otherwise we just wouldn't do it. It's a very energetic show, and it does go for some time. And if we couldn't cut the mustard now, we wouldn't do it. If we couldn't produce what we produced when we're 18, 17, 18, 19, well, we wouldn't do it, because it's not fair to the punters and it's not fair to us. I think you describe it beautifully, trying to put a handle on it, because even to an outsider, it's emotional. In your performing, I guess you must have flashbacks to Jim up front and those early days.
Too right. Oh, too right. Yeah, you've hit a nail. It's a really big point, terrific point. What we've found is we've sold out every show we've played at since the induction into the South Australian Music Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And we find that the whole night becomes, in South Australia in any case, becomes one. That the audience and the band melt, so in the room there's one unit. It's not the band up on the stage and the audience down the bottom.
Yeah.
They all sort of meld in together. The demographics are interesting that we've had. It's been us baby boomers, and then there's the baby boomers' children, and then there's some nieces and nephews running around of the 18 to 23 mark. So we've covered the whole lot. And we're always, every show's happy.
Oh, fantastic.
So there's tears, emotion. We're obviously bringing up some sort of event, good and or bad, for the people in the crowd. And every show we've had people have come up, in tears. Oh, thank you. And then I sort of don't ask why, but they enjoyed it so much. It brought back memories. That's generally the rule of comment.
Oh, magnificent. But what a sensational way to celebrate Jim after his sad passing in 2014, to get together and perform those old tracks. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is a tribute to Jim. I mean, he kept the fire running, he kept the motor running till 1972.
Yeah.
And with that, we honour his presence. When we were inducted into the South Australian Music Hall of Fame, Jim was due to fly over, and we were going to get together for the first time in 48 years, but unfortunately 2 weeks prior he passed away.
That was unfortunate, yeah.
It was. He did put up a fine battle, about 7 or 8 years with it. And anyway, his wife and 2 daughters came across, and now it was only a small gig. There's only about 250 in the room, but by goodness, was that emotional.
Oh, I can only imagine.
It was electric, the spirit, tears, the whole shooting match, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, you'll be performing with Rick Harrison, who joined in 1967. To see you coming across after sold-out shows in Adelaide last year, now coming into Melbourne, is nothing short of poetic. Was it part of the original plan to come from Adelaide to Melbourne, just like those early days?
No. What happened is that we got together after 40-odd years. They wanted us to play at our induction. What are we going to do? Rob Pippin was the musical director of the night, and he has the Rob Pippin Band. Now, talk about serendipitous. The band, Rob Pippin Band, used to back Jim for years when he came to town.
Of course, yes. And
so Rob said, right, we can knit this together. There are links here because people enjoyed it so much. He said, well, let's do the Fringe. So we did the Fringe and a couple of other shows, and then I don't know whether you know John Pemberton, who's a well-known retired radio announcer in Adelaide. He's a guru. He knows everything about music. What colour dress should a black hat on? And she sang a song, and he said, "You must go to Melbourne." He comes from Victoria. He's teaching me to say Melbourne. And he said, "You've got to do the Corner Hotel." So that went on for a year, and then Rob thought, and I'd suggested, and Michael, that we should do it sooner rather than later. I mean, we are moving along. Michael's just turned 70, and I'm 68, and Rich 70, and so here it is. Quite exciting. I mean, I still, once again, it's really exciting, but I'm just holding it in, not letting it run away. So that really looking forward to it. We just come over to Melbourne for a promotional day 2 days ago, and that was ever so exciting, and checked out the venue and I could feel it again, you know.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But, speaking of holding it back, of course, with Rob and Craig Holden, Polly Politas, Nanette Van Ruden, Matt McNamee, but the legendary guitarist John Bywaters. Has it taken 50 years to forgive John and the Twilights for winning the Hoadley's Battle of the Bands in 1966?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Of course, he has not stopped playing as John Bywaters.
Yes.
Of the Twilights. In fact, they've had gigs in Adelaide. We played at David Day's memorial benefit concert 18 months ago. They played with the Twilights there. They got to come together with Glenn Shorrock. They've also played, which unfortunately I've missed, really disappointed, with the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, which would be one hell of a show. So yeah, he's finely tuned. He's in form.
Magnificent. Well, this will be a vastly special night, and we cannot wait to celebrate the 1965 Masters Apprentices with all of you and in remembrance of Jim.
Correct.
Indeed. Do you still, I have to ask you, do you still receive thanks and comments from contemporary bands regarding the way you shaped and influenced Australian rock all those years ago?
We do occasionally. Bear in mind that we play sparingly. We just stretch it out. We don't want to, wear anybody out. Buried and Dead was just covered by Radio Birdman last year, so we were quite thrilled with that. And we had a record signing, and one of the lads turned up, one of the Radio Birdman men turned up, and that was really exciting. Silverchair covered Undecided.
Yes.
Some years ago. Yes, we do. Look, we do. Other bands come up to us when they see us and talk about the stuff we did. But remembering that in this field there's always a fair bit of ego tripping around, and we endeavour to keep our ego to ourselves.
Oh, beautifully put.
So
and probably sounds
right. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do.
So there is a bit of jealousy around from time to time. Yeah. But that's the game, isn't it?
It is too. And of course, this night will be a standout memory for all fortunate enough to attend. Do you recall a performance from the early days, Brian, one that stands out as particularly significant for you?
Yes, I do. It was at the Octagon Theatre, and we play on the card with the Easy Beats, Normally Rowan the Playboys. Yeah. There was us and a couple of other bands. At the Octagon Theatre was out at Elizabeth, where the English immigrants were. So it was basically our home turf. And they used to have, on a Saturday night, they have about 6 bands, fold them through, and you do your gig, jump in the car and race back to town to do another gig, get paid $2 bob. And on that night, we were most successful. There was 2 thrills for me. The first one, that Snowy from the Easy Beats used my drums and gave me a signed photo.
Oh, wow.
Autograph photo. I was pretty impressed with that. And the second one was that the response we got from the crowd that night was over the top.
Oh, incredible.
And we had that other lineup, yeah. The Easy Beats were pretty young too, they were early.
Indeed. Well, we cannot wait for this all to make manifest next week, next Friday at the Corner Hotel. Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and sincerely, thank you very kindly for your time today.
It's a pleasure, and please come and say good day. There'll be a bit of tension around the place early, but we'll break through it, and we're going to play all the hits, plus a few of the covers that we played in the early days. So we're really looking forward to it. Thank you very much for your interview.
Oh, pleasure indeed. And please travel safely. We can't wait to see you next week, and certainly we'll make sure that we come and say hello, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity, the honour, to spend a little time with you.
Well, hopefully we can do that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Talk to you next week.
See you. Bye.
Goodbye.